Hi, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Josephine. I'm a Millennium Fellow at Rollins College in Florida, USA. And I'm Mary, and I'm also a Millennium Fellow at Rollins. It's our great pleasure to welcome you to the 4th Millennium Fellowship Webinar featuring Wendy Kopp, founder and CEO of Teach for All. Thank you so much for joining us today. First, we'd like to introduce MCN's Executive Director, Sam Vagar.
Well, hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I know you're in many different time zones. My name is Sam Vagar, Executive Director of Millennium Campus Network, MCN. Wendy, such a pleasure to connect with you. And just to give you a little bit of context and orient you to our community and to others who will watch this webinar when we share it across our global listserv. MCN is a global student movement for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Really, our audacious goal is to convene and train 25,000 young leaders for the Sustainable Development Goals by 2025. And we want to build a robust and predictive pipeline of social impact talent at the undergraduate level, really by meeting student leaders where they are at, ensuring they have the requisite training, connections, and recognition to excel in this work, and in so doing, building a pipeline that's trusted by employers like you, by funders, by graduate schools. And an important step in this process has been the partnership we formed at MCN with the United Nations Academic Impact to launch the Millennium Fellowship. We had students apply in this global pilot on 285 campuses across 57 countries. We picked the top 30 campuses in 13 countries, 11%, 530 Millennium Fellows, who really have exhibited such strong leadership and being trained as ethical, collaborative leaders in this work. And really what we're inviting young leaders to do is own their voice and power for social impact in the communities they care about, to help localize the Sustainable Development Goals and unite principles and make them reality. So the leaders who are convening on this webinar, I know all of you are especially passionate as a subset of the class on SDG 4. And with a passion for education, you know, Wendy is one of those leaders that I think we're all so fortunate to be able to hear from. And Wendy, I hope we'll have further opportunities to engage with you. You're such a role model for this generation, and we're really grateful that you're sharing some time in your busy schedule with us. And I just want to acknowledge Josephine and Mary, for you at Rollins College to be convening us is brilliant. And, you know, what we invite young leaders to do is really own your voice and power. And you all don't know this, but this particular webinar is the result of Josephine, you having the courage to reach out. And, you know, I don't think Wendy knew about you before, but she does now. And that's what we want to prove, is that we're all on the same team. We're all committed to a broad set of objectives that really strengthen community. And when you have the courage of your convictions, incredible things can happen. So Josephine, thank you for having the courage to reach out. And Wendy, thank you so much for responding and making the time. And with that, I just want to say thank you all for joining in today. And I'll turn it back over to you, Josephine and Mary. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. So we're going to talk to some really exciting people the next hour, but we're going to start off hearing from Davey Atanka, who's a Millennium Fellow at Asesh University, and he's going to talk about his ongoing initiative that aims to provide better education for underprivileged students in his community. And then we're going to have our moderated dialogue for around 15 minutes with Ms. Kopp, for her to talk about her experiences. And then finally, for the remaining 25 minutes, we're going to have an open Q&A, so the Millennium Fellows here can ask their own questions to Ms. Kopp. So please remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking, and anytime during the webinar when you have questions, you can type them into the chat box, and then we'll use those during the Q&A. And if you haven't introduced yourself, please remember to do that. So to start off today's talk, we'd like to introduce Davey Atanka, a first-generation student from Nirigu, northern Ghana. Having successfully completed high school in 2013, Davey enrolled at Ashesi University 2 years later to study electrical engineering, thanks to a generous scholarship from the MasterCard Foundation Scholars Program. A humanitarian at heart, Davey has a strong conviction that there is a need for all humans to have access to a dignified life, void of the things that bring pain and Davy has often volunteered and participated in undertakings aimed at improving society, and is currently volunteering with the Mentors Network, a mentorship program aimed at guiding young students to reach their full potential in life. Selected to attend the Clinton Global Initiative Conference in 2018, Davy is currently working on a project that seeks to combat poverty and unemployment among women in his hometown. So Davy, whenever you're ready, we'd love to open up the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Josephine and Mary, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Davy Atanga, a Millennium Fellow from Ashesi University, Ghana. And I'm really privileged to have this opportunity to share the work we're doing at Ashesi University here called Mentors Network. To tell you about Mentors Network, please allow me to tell you a little about myself. So I come from northern Ghana, and between 2006 and 2013, I went through what we call junior and senior high schools in Ghana. For the first 3 years, I went to junior high school, and as much as I enjoyed the time at junior high school, there were challenges that I faced. Challenges such as not having enough textbooks. There were times that we did not have teachers for certain courses or subjects. And I quite remember that 6 months to my O-level exam, I did not have an English teacher. You know, and other challenges such as not having light to learn or study at night. And I had to wait for my mother to finish using the kerosene-powered lantern before I could read at night. And sometimes by then, I'm already asleep. But I was able to make it. I passed the exam and went to senior high school. But not all my classmates were able to go through. Some of them failed. And unfortunately, that marked the end of their academic or educational journey. So I went to senior high school for the rest of the 4 years, and things were a bit different there. I had textbooks for most of the subjects. I had teachers for most of the courses, and I had electricity to read at night. And everything seemed good. After 4 years, I wrote the WASI, and I passed. But I couldn't go to college after 2 years. After I graduated, I stayed home for 2 years because my mother could not afford tuition for college. What I'm trying to say is there are students who live in certain parts of the world, and they are disadvantaged just because of their location. Unfortunately, today in Ghana, we still have these challenges. There are many students who live in conditions where they do not have access to good education. They do not have textbooks to study. They do not have enough teachers to teach them. And some teachers refuse posting to these communities just because these communities are in the rural-like setting in the country and do not have social amenities such as electricity. And this is exactly the reason why Mentors Network was started back in 2013 by 2 Ashesi students to combat this issue, to raise to take away this barrier and increase access to quality education for everyone, regardless of where you live or what you have or what you do not have. For the past years, we have been able to chalk some success. We've been able to provide textbooks to our partner schools, and we've partnered with more than 10 schools, senior high schools in the north and junior high schools right here. Currently, we're working with 5 senior high schools in the north, and we're working with Ayim Junior High School in the neighboring community. And what we do is that every weekend, volunteer mentors sacrifice 2 hours of their time to go spend time with these students, engage with them, and to help them revise topics that they did not clearly understand in class. And for senior high schools, just last semester, we had representatives from Mentors Network, about 5 students who went around to these high schools to introduce educational opportunities such as scholarships, the MasterCard scholarship. If I had known about the MasterCard scholarship, I could have gone to school right after graduating from high school. But I did not know because of my environment, right? And this is what we want to end. We want to provide equal access to educational opportunities to everyone, every student, regardless of where they were born, their background or anything. So this is what Mentors Network stands for, to provide access to quality education to everyone. Right now, we boast of 20 volunteer mentors and who are passionate, and we are doing our best to make this happen. And last year we were fortunate to win a grant of $6,900, and this is what we're using to fund our activities. So basically, this is what Mentors Network is about. And I'm so passionate about this work because it gives me an opportunity to provide a solution that I needed so badly but did not get when I was back then, when I was in a similar situation. So this is what Mentors Network is all about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Davey, for sharing your story. So inspiring. You're doing such great work. If any of you are interested in further discussions with Davey, please reach out to him using the contact information listed in his Millennium Fellowship profile. And you can see that Sam put a link with more information on his project in the chat, so we encourage you to check that out. So now moving on to our featured guest speaker, Wendy Kopp. Wendy Kopp is CEO and co-founder of Teach for All, a global network of independent organizations that are developing collective leadership to ensure all children have the opportunity to fulfill their potential. Wendy founded Teach for America in 1989 to marshal the energy of her generation against educational inequity in the U.S. Today, close to 7,000 Teach for America core members, outstanding recent college graduates and professionals of all academic disciplines, are in the midst of 2-year teaching commitments in 53 urban and rural locations. And Teach for America has proven to be an unparalleled source of long-term leadership for expanding opportunity for children. After leading Teach for America's growth and development for 24 years, in 2013, Wendy transitioned out of the role of CEO. Today, she remains an active member on Teach for America's board. Wendy developed Teach for All to be responsive to the initiative of inspiring social entrepreneurs around the world who were determined to adapt this approach in their own countries. Currently, the Teach for All network is comprised of partner organizations in 48 countries on 6 continents, including its founding partners, Teach for America and the UK's Teach First. Wendy has been recognized as one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people and is the recipient of numerous honorary degrees and awards for public service. She is the author of A Chance to Make History, What Works and What Doesn't in Providing an Excellent Education for All, and also One Day, All Children, The Unlikely Triumph of Teach for America and What I Learned Along the Way. She holds a bachelor's degree from Princeton University, where she participated in the undergraduate program of the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs. Wendy resides in New York City with her husband, Richard Barth, and their 4 children. Now, Wendy, if you'd like to say a few words, we'd love to open the floor to you. And as a reminder to everyone else, please type your questions for Ms. Kopp in the chat box for the open Q&A to follow.
Hi, you all. It's an honor to be here with you, Davey, to hear your inspiring story and work. You know, I'm excited and grateful to MCN and to the UN Academic Impact for their work in building the Millennium Fellows program, which is so much needed. You know, I think you all's commitment to working in collaboration and working with empathy and humility is exactly kind of what we need in this world. We've articulated our core purpose across the Teach for All network as being to develop collective leadership to ensure all children fulfill their potential. And the idea, which is one that I think you all embody and are committed to, is that if we're really going to address the inequities that face children, you know, they're so complex. It's going to take so many different efforts at every level of the education system and really from across sectors and at every level of policy. So it's going to take a lot of people exerting leadership from all of those different vantage points if we're going to get where we're trying to go. So just excited to talk with you all and have an open discussion today.
Thank you, Wendy. So we're going to reflect, right, on where you were at the beginning, right around our age, so 19, 20, 21 years old. You were an Echoing Green Fellow. Our friends at Echoing Green talk about a moment of obligation when a social entrepreneur finds their calling. So can you speak to what first inspired you to start Teach for America?
Sure. Actually, I think it was a product of many things coming together. When I was a senior in college, for the first time in my life, I mean, really up until then, I'd just been such an absolutely driven and, I mean, always in overdrive kind of kid, right? From academics to extracurriculars. I mean, I always was working just 24/7 on one thing or another. But I reached this point during my senior year where I just descended into a real funk. Really, for the first time in my life, I just realized that I really needed to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and I just wasn't sure. At the time, all the options for kind of liberal arts graduates from Princeton were management consulting firms, investment banks banging down our doors, and I just thought, I was just asking myself, do I really want to work as hard as I've worked to this point in my life for one of these firms? Like, you know, and so I started really thinking about that. And one of the things that was most top of mind for me was the fact that I felt so much freedom to do whatever I wanted to do because I had the chance to have an excellent education. I mean, I didn't come from a terribly wealthy family, but my family kind of bought their way into a community that had really strong public schools, and that really, so I was thinking a lot about that, but also at Princeton, which, you know, is kind of an unlikely place for this. I think on any college campus you realize how much disparity there is in our country, in the United States. And my freshman year roommate had gone to public schools in the South Bronx and overcame every odd to make it to Princeton. And through her, I met a lot of other first generation college students at Princeton. And as a public policy major and just a concerned college student, I became more and more focused on the inequities in our country. So it was all of those things coming together where one day I just thought, you know what, why aren't we being recruited as aggressively to commit 2 years to teach in our urban and rural public schools as I was being recruited to commit 2 years to work on Wall Street? And I just became obsessed with this idea. I was sure that people would jump at the chance to do this. I thought it would make such a huge difference for kids growing up today and in the priorities of a generation of leaders. Like, what if we had people's first experience be teaching in low-income communities instead of working on Wall Street? Like, that would change everything, I thought. So anyway, I needed a thesis topic and decided to propose this idea, and it was kind of very quickly far beyond me, honestly. So that was the beginning.
Wow. Yeah, you definitely see a lot of inequity, especially on college campuses. It's really admirable that you found some kind of solution to that. So you've recently transitioned more into working with Teach for All, and so we were wondering, what's your vision for Teach for All in the next 25 years? And also, what role have friends, mentors, and peer organizations played in making that vision reality?
Yeah. So I had my head down. I mean, I was really just focused on the US for many, many years because the challenges here are massive and ongoing. But thankfully, there was something in the water probably about I don't know, 13 years ago now. Within 1 year, I mean, I had not heard from anyone outside this country except from the UK. But within 1 year, I had heard from 13 people from India to Lebanon to Chile to China to many other places who were just determined to do something similar in their countries and were looking for help. And that's what led to the idea of the Teach for All Network, a network of independent, locally led organizations in different countries that would share the same mission and purpose and be able to learn from each other as a way of accelerating impact. So we launched this 11 years ago, and as you've seen, it's now, in 48 countries and growing, with 48 independent organizations, all committed to galvanizing their countries' most promising leaders. Like Davy, your story, right? Like Teach for Ghana, we need more people like you committing yourself to making sure that other kids have the chances you ultimately found. I mean, you overcame so much to get to a Shea seat, but and that's what these organizations are doing across the world, is to say, how can we get the rising generation of leaders to channel their energy towards ensuring that our children have the opportunity to gain the kind of education that will enable them to shape a better future for all of us, for themselves and for all of us. And that's going to take reinventing the education system, and it's going to take a lot more than 2 years of teaching, right? But we need those 2 years of teaching because of both what it does for kids growing up today, and because that's where you learn what we really need and what these people go on to do to exert real changes in their education systems through pioneering new school models, starting ways of retraining teachers and school principals, working in their government ministries, moving into policy, into their parliaments, solving the nutrition systems facing kids, and many other things. So it's all about developing a leadership force of locally rooted leaders who can change things. I think actually, we've, to your question about vision, we came together across our network about 3 years ago to consider this question, like, what are we all working to accomplish together over the next 25 years? And we picked 25 years because we've come to see this as a very long game. Like, to have meaningful and sustainable change in this arena really does take time. And we came together around a vision of whole communities, like meaning cities, regions, geographic areas, enabling all their children to have the education, support, and opportunity to shape a better future for themselves and all of us, so that those communities can inspire a worldwide movement to do this everywhere. So that's what we're working towards. In order to get there, we're trying to grow the network, support the network partners to scale with quality, orient towards a broader set of outcomes for kids that will enable them to grow as leaders who can navigate a changing economy and solve increasingly complex societal problems. And finally, help everyone learn from each other across borders. We've come to realize that as much as we'll never get where we need to be without deeply locally rooted leaders, they can move so much more quickly when they're learning from each other across borders. So we're working to build, hundreds of networks within our network of educators and leaders in different realms who are sharing solutions and learning from each other. So that's a little bit about what we're working to do. This is a product of so many people coming together to support. It's about the local people who are pioneering these organizations in different countries. It's about the incredible teachers and ultimately alumni who commit themselves to this. It's about the donors and allies and governmental allies in each of these countries. And then globally as well, so many people who have come together to help make this work, donors who enable it, friends and advisors. I think about, I think about the gentleman who you may know of, Fazal Abed, who runs BRAC in Bangladesh, who is just an icon in my mind, who's built the largest NGO in the world and is one of the most thoughtful and wise people I've ever met, who took the time when he heard that I was thinking about taking what I had done at Teach for America and taking a more global approach to reach out and say, I really want to talk, and got me over all of my barriers and hurdles in thinking through like whether I could actually take this on myself. So it took so many different people, and it continues to live into the potential of it all.
Perfect. So we have one more question for you before we move into the open Q&A. So just a reminder to everyone, if you're not staying in the chat, please go ahead and type your questions and include your name, university, and country, and then we'll pick people to share their questions. So Wendy, as we are at the beginning of our social impact careers, you kind of spoke to this in the last question, but what concrete advice do you have for us, especially for people focusing on SDG 4? So, which is, to include inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all.
Yeah, I think my biggest thought is just about how important it is to get as close to the issue as possible. Like, you know, there's kind of a movement around social entrepreneurship today that, I mean, the term wasn't even in use when I was a college student. I think I first heard it many years after that, and when someone said, you are a social entrepreneur, and I was like, really, what is that? But now that there's this thing, it's like everyone wants to go start something. And I actually think that shouldn't be the frame. Like, we should be working to have an impact against the most pressing issues. But to do that, we need to really understand those issues. And so I think getting into the arena, you know, and you know, of course, this is so close to home, but one thing I've just seen over time, I don't think I could have understood this when I first dreamed up this idea, but you see so much as a teacher. Like, you kind of have the microcosm of society playing itself out in your classroom. You know, you've got kids and families with diverse situations bringing all of their challenges and assets and opportunities, and they're doing that within a system not meeting their needs. So you kind of get such a picture, and it's such a foundation to then figure out what can you do to make the biggest difference in the face of that. So I think that's one way, is to get into classrooms, but I think that there are certainly other ways to get into communities as close to kids, families, and communities as you can, to get that foundation. I think that's the path of no regrets. Even I mean, I didn't do that, and you know, when I look at the people through the Teach for All kind of movement who have that experience, there's just nothing to replace that in terms of the perspective it gives you, the credibility it gives you, the passion that and the conviction in what's important and what's possible in this.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to move into the open Q&A section. So for this, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box, and then we'll call on individual people, and then go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then ask a question. So first we're going to hear from T. Rolted Sana from the African Methodist Episcopal University in Liberia. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself and share your question with Wendy. Are you able to unmute yourself, T. Rolted Sana? So if you're having technical issues, just type in the chat and we can come back to you later. But in the meantime, why don't we hear from Andrew Rosenblatt from Cornell University in the US.
Splendid. I think I'm unmuted. Fantastic. Hi, Wendy. Thank you for coming. It's splendid to hear from you. I'm Andrew. My question deals with turning your thesis into concrete action, really. I was wondering how you took all this passion and verve and your idea for Teach for America turned into a thesis, into an organization, a national organization. Many of us have like goals and passions that we want to achieve, yet taking concrete action to try to achieve them by bringing other people into some sort of structured organization seems amorphous and very difficult. So I'm wondering how you took your path from your thesis to Teach for America. to where it is
Yeah.
now?
No. Well, first of all, I think it was really fortuitous that I had to write a thesis because I spent a lot of time researching, the policy context in which Teach for America would need to work. Everything from the mood on college campuses to, and then looked at historical models like the Peace Corps and Vista and other kind of service corps models in the U.S. And then I developed a real plan. It was like a 4-page plan to say how would we do this that was informed by all that research. And then I honestly just followed the plan. So I think that really is the first step, is to really do your research, develop the plan that seems feasible. Then I spent, several months. I mean, actually I had no money, so I had to find a way to live while pursuing this idea. And thankfully, I mean, I sent this thesis out to a bunch of random business people, you guys, who were quoted in magazines and stuff. And a few of them agreed to meet with me because it really was an idea that people would listen to it and say, gosh, that is such a good idea. And I was able to get a seed grant that enabled me to spend my summer just meeting people to test the idea. So then I lived off of that grant and went around the country and met with people in school districts and potential donors. I mean, it was really hard to get through to people. I mean, here I was 22 years old, if that, and, but I would write a bunch and no email. I mean, can you imagine? Letters, like mailings, phone calls. But I would get through to someone and then they would get me through to someone else. Like it was slow going, but by the end of the summer, I'd met quite a few people. And it was interesting because everyone thought this was a great idea, but that the college students would never do it. Like that was the thing that they thought would never work. And because that was the one thing and the only thing I had any reason to know, like I was so convinced the college students would do it, having just been a college student. So I decided I'm going to show these people. and we launched a grassroots recruitment campaign and got like 2,500 people to apply within 3 months, the fall of that next year after I'd graduated. And then everything else came together. But really, I was just following the plan, Yeah.
That's very interesting. Thank you. Could you speak a little more on the grassroots recruitment campaign?
Yeah. I met a few, I had this thing about not having my friends. I mean, my friends all thought I was crazy, and it just seemed like that was a constraint, like them thinking I was crazy. So I would like work with other people. So I would run into these other recent grads who were like, wow, that's really cool. So I found my way to a few of them, and we decided, okay, let's find friends on campuses and have each of those friends find someone who represented diversity on that campus, because we thought we need to build a really diverse core, especially inclusive of folks, like we're working in low-income communities, African-American, Latino folks, people who grew up in low-income communities. Like, let's make sure our recruiters are those people. So we went to 100 campuses. Like, we had a list of 100 top campuses, diverse campuses, historically Black colleges, Ivy League schools, state colleges, whatever. And we decided to try to find our way through our networks to college students to then design their own flyers, put them under doors. I mean, again, there was no email. Can you imagine? And yeah, that's what that looked like.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for your question, Andrew. So now we want to turn to Connie from Northeastern University.
Hi, Wendy. My name is Connie, and hi, everyone else. I'm a senior studying economics at Northeastern University in Boston. And my question to Wendy is that we have had a pretty hard time fundraising for our initiative, and I was curious. I loved your episode with how I built this, and I loved the story of how you started Teach for America. So I was wondering any advice you could give us to how do we approach donors and how do we think about fundraising strategies at a very early stage? Thank you.
Yeah, it's so challenging, you all. I have to say, even now, like, I woke up this morning and told myself this is going to be a great day. I am praying and hoping because it has to be a great day. Like, I've got a lot of big funding meetings and we are in desperate need. The fact that 30 years in, it's still as hard as it is a terrifying comment. I mean, really, it's so hard. So it's just hard. It's hard for everyone. You know, I think it's easy to get inside your head like it's just hard for you. It's harder for some than others, but it's hard for everyone. I think, I don't know what to tell you. I think the most important thing, you probably know a lot of these. First of all, I'd be really as careful as you can about not getting out in front of yourselves. Like, you know, like figuring out what you have to have in order to get to the next step. And, you know, even if it's a smaller grant, then, you know, I think that's one way to go, because it's easier for people to give smaller amounts of money to start up things than bigger amounts. Relationships are so crucial. So finding your way to people, and then even if they're not the people with the resources, if they're people connected to people with resources, really investing them in you personally and in your idea, and taking the time necessary to do that so that people feel like they want to help you out. That's a big thing. And then what else? I would say, yeah, and think expansively about who can help you. You know, sometimes people running other organizations, you know, I can't tell you how many people I meet, you know, people trying to start their own organizations, et cetera. I mean, I only have so much time, but I do try to make time for some of these folks. And, you know, I can help connect them to people. And there are many, many other people like me who actually can do that too. So, you know, just thinking through, I don't know, those are some of my initial thoughts, not knowing the specifics of your circumstances.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie, for your question. So next is Euro from the University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia has a question. I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. So you can go ahead.
Hi, do you hear? Can you?
Yeah, you're good.
Hi. Oh my goodness. Well, yes, my name is Ijiro. Thank you for not butchering the name. It's common. But I'm actually from the South Bronx, and like growing up in the South Bronx, my mom will do like take great lengths in order to get me to another district because my school district was so bad. So I was very excited to hear that their South Bronx roommate was actually a key partial inspiration. So that was very helpful. My main question is that one of the biggest critiques for Teach for America is that it has a low retention rate for people staying in the field of teaching. And I know I was talking to my roommates and they were very critical about it as well because I expressed interest. People were using it as like a launching board for just other career paths. Do you think in the future, with increasing the retention rate, should that be one of like TFA's like main goal? Or would you just keep the setup as the way it is?
So the one thing to know, so you know, you look at 30 years now of Teach for America, and there are 60,000 people over time who've done Teach for America. 85% of the 60,000 are still doing mission-related work, right? 37% are teaching, another 30% are in other roles in education. There are hundreds and hundreds, well over 1,000 of school principals, many, many, many people working in school districts, many superintendents and whole state commissioners, and, you know, folks who work in educational NGOs as well. And then there's another 20% who are in policy or public health or other things that they would say are all about improving either education or the quality of life in low-income communities. These are people who came in saying, you know, fewer than 10 or 15%, depending on the year, say that they would have taught if it were not for this, and most of them not in low-income communities. So they commit to this and they never leave the work. I think what you realize when you get into this is that we're not going to solve this problem through teaching alone. I mean, we need as many heroic teachers as possible to go far above and beyond traditional expectations and make up for everything that's going wrong. But in order to really get to a different place, we need people who take what they learn as teachers and act on it, redesign schools, change the way systems operate, fix the social services system, change the policies so that funding allocates as it should, and we put more money into this and many other things, right? So in fact, our whole idea is not, in fact, we won't have a goal around increasing retention in teaching, because the whole point of our work is to say we need to fix a system that has been broken for decades. And we're going to do that through developing collective leadership. We need many people to decide to stay in the classroom for sure, because we need lots of leadership from teachers and from within classrooms. But we need other people to leave the classrooms and to affect change from other sectors. So as long as they are working on mission-related things and exerting leadership in pursuit of our ultimate vision, we think that's a huge win. And I won't say more at length, but I will say things are so different in communities where Teach for America has been placing people for many, many years. And they're different for lots of reasons. Lots of things have changed. But if you took the Teach for America alumni out of these cities and rural regions, you would take away so much of the energy and leadership that's driven the change. In most of the urban areas where we're working, more than 20% of the school principals are Teach for America alumni. They are running many of the departments in those districts. They're running almost all the NGOs in these communities. They are really a significant leadership force for change. So I don't know what to do to help people like your roommates have a bigger picture and understand like the situation in its fuller complexity. It's my biggest puzzle with Teach for America itself, honestly. Like, how do they get the real story out and help people really understand more deeply the circumstance?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. So we want to move on to Osa Suwan Michael at the University of Benin in Nigeria. So you can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi. I'm reading your question.
All right. Thanks so much.
Well, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties. We can't hear you. So we're just going to go ahead and ask, Wendy, I know you talked about this a little bit already, but how were you able to convince others to buy your idea when you were still?
Much, ma'am, for this opportunity, and thanks to also know for you.
Wait, let me just answer his question. Yes, Teach for Nigeria. It is absolutely up and running. It's just now placing its second cohort. They're growing tremendously. There are tremendous people around Teach for Nigeria. And we're really excited about its potential. I just was in Nigeria visiting the first Teach for Nigerian Fellows in Ogun State. They're planning to place many more people there and in Kaduna State and also in Lagos. And some of the most inspiring people I've ever met are part of Teach for Nigeria on the board, on the staff, and among the initial fellows. So I hope you'll look into it. And Teach for Ghana too, by the way. And Teach for Uganda, if there's anyone from Uganda out there. And another 10 are in the pipeline in Africa. We're so excited about the growing work in across the African continent.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was actually Philemon from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria's question. But there's another question from a student from Nigeria.
Okay.
Suman Michael at the University of Benin. And he seems to be having technical difficulties. But his question was how you were able to get other people to buy your idea during the start of Teach for America.
Yeah.
Which already spoke to a little, but I didn't know if you had any specific thing about that.
You know what? I mean, what that brings to mind. So one thing that I've kind of realized along the way is that not everyone has to buy in, right? Like I probably, for every 2 people who said, this is such a great idea, there were probably 98 who said, this makes no sense. You know, what you realize is you just need to find a few people who say yes. And that, so it's the whole thing is about a search for allies at every level, like allies in the funding community, allies in the education system, allies among the recent grads. Like you don't need everyone, but you need some people who buy in, and then once you have a few, that can lead to many over time.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So this is going to be our last question as we start to wrap it up, just to respect everyone's time. So Kenna, back from the University of California, Davis, one of the.
Good morning. Can you guys all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. Looking back, what would you have liked to know when you started your organization? And the second question are, what are some challenges that you faced that played a role in where you are or the work that you've done? And thank you for being here, Wendy.
Yeah. Oh gosh, those questions could keep me busy all day. I think I would say, so to the first one, you know, people ask me like, what would you do differently? And it's sort of a similar question. Like, I think the thing I would do, and maybe it has implications as well for you all's work as you think about SDG 4. And we are now working to do this across Teach for All, but I wish I'd had this thought about 30 years ago when we started Teach for America. You know, I would really put at the center of our work in any given, I mean, we cluster our energy in certain communities, right? Like certain geographic regions. And I would really put at the center of the work in any of those places an effort to co-create with the people in the communities, students, families, other educators, business people, community leaders, like, you know, political folks, like a vision for students, meaning, you know, really come together and reflect on, by the time our kids are 25, what do we want to have be true, given our local values and aspirations and the actual challenges facing kids and the actual pathways to opportunity and our global understandings as well, like what we want our countries and world to look like, and the UN goals, you know, like what is our vision for students? Because we're working in a school system that was created in a very different era when all of those factors were very different, and we kind of need to step out of that box if we're going to prepare kids for what's to come, right? And what I've seen is that that is also the foundation for true community partnership. You know, otherwise we go into communities and we're working towards whatever we think is right, but that may not reflect what the people, the kids, the families, the others in the communities think is right. So that's probably my biggest thought about what I wish I'd had my head around 30 years ago. Some of the challenges I faced, I mean, where to begin? I don't think there's a dimension where there wasn't a challenge. I mean, you can imagine from listening to my story, I mean, I was 21, I had no idea about anything. I mean, I knew nothing. And I knew that I knew nothing. So that was the one asset I had, was I actually realized I didn't know anything and I needed a ton of help, and I was asking for advice from everyone. But the learning curves have been and continue to be, I mean, so massive around everything from, as you asked, like how do you raise money? How do you build not just a startup funding base, but a sustainable funding base? How do you manage? I mean, I really had no time or energy for the fine details of management when I was 21. I thought everyone should just figure it out and make it happen because we're all on a mission together. And, you know, I realized over time that figuring out how to build a strong organization was going to be really important, but it took me like 10 years to have any idea of what I was doing on that front. The programmatic challenges were also immense. You know, how do you really train and support and develop teachers and leaders who have a transformational impact for kids? And then finally, the political challenges were massive. So on every front, I can't even, actually, I chronicle the immense challenges in the first decade of Teach for America in that book, One Day All Children, which was really about that. I mean, I wrote it for other social entrepreneurs more than anyone, like just like the journey from idea to quote stable institution, which is just a massive personal learning journey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone for all your questions. And thank you especially to Wendy for taking the time to share your experiences with us, just for being such an inspiring presence.
No, thank you all. It was great to talk with you. Good luck in all of your pursuits, and hopefully our paths will cross along the way.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks. So the fellows would love to keep in touch with you. What would be the best way to do that?
You know what? I'll go ahead and put my email, which is super simple, in the chat box.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks, you all.
Thank you, Wendy.
Bye. Yep. Bye.
For everyone. And I'd also like to thank all the Millennium Fellows who joined, and I hope you were able to gain some great insights. We look forward also to your participation in the next webinar featuring Lopa Banduri, Director of the Civil Society Division at the UN Women, next Friday, November 16th at 11 a.m.